Deep beneath the Earth's surface, we've discovered something that defies modern physics. Ancient salt mines engineered as massive, biological tuning forks. These aren't just caves. They are crystalline acoustic chambers designed to synchronize your brainwaves using precise resonant frequencies. Could these subterranean networks be the lost technology of advanced sonic healing? The Hallstatt salt mine network in the Austrian Salzkammergut descends to depths exceeding 300 meters below the mountain surface. Here, inside a mountain composed of halite, rock salt, ancient miners of the Iron Age hand-cut tunnels that extend for kilometers into the tectonic dark. The air is heavy with 90% humidity and the sharp, antiseptic scent of sodium chloride. In the silence of the prehistoric sections, even a single footfall produces a decay time that lasts nearly 10 seconds. We have documented the engineering of these tunnels through the lens of industrial output, mapping the tons of white gold removed to fuel the Celtic economy. What we have only recently begun to measure is the way these chambers manipulate the physics of sound. The question is not why the Celts needed salt. The economic necessity is established. The question is why certain hand-cut chambers, located hundreds of meters from the industrial shafts, possess a geometry that produces a near-perfect standing wave at 110 Hertz. The mainstream archaeological consensus regarding the Celtic salt networks is grounded in the material record. From 800 BCE to 400 BCE, Hallstatt was the epicenter of European trade. Salt was the world's first global commodity, essential for preserving protein and sustaining human life across the winter. Excavation reports from the 19th century onward have recovered thousands of artifacts, pinewood torches, leather-carrying rucksacks, and even the man in salt, a prehistoric miner preserved perfectly for millennia. This evidence points toward a highly organized industrial society focused on efficiency. The mining was the purpose. However, as we venture into the furthest reaches of the Bochnia and Hallstatt systems, we encounter dead-end chambers that served no industrial function. They yielded no salt because they were cut into non-productive strata, yet they were engineered with a precision that exceeds the industrial norm. Before we go further, if this kind of content is what you've been looking for, subscribe to the channel. Every video here goes into one documented anomaly, one genuine unresolved question in ancient history or archaeology, with the actual measurements, the actual scholarly debate, and the honest account of what we know and what we're still working out. No ancient aliens, no mainstream conspiracy. The real thing. The silence of the salt mines is not an absence of sound, but a waiting frequency. And leave a comment. Why does the geometry of the Hallstatt prehistoric mining chambers specifically match the resonant frequencies required to induce a standing wave at 110 Hertz? This investigation into subterranean resonance is the first step in understanding the acoustic Neolithic, a pattern of site selection based on auditory rather than visual perception. Now, back into the site. In 2014, the Archaeoacoustic surveys of several subterranean prehistoric sites across Europe identified a recurring technical anomaly. Whether in the Hallstatt hypogeum in Malta or the Neolithic passage tombs of Ireland, many of these spaces exhibit a primary resonance at exactly 110 Hertz. When a male voice or a drum beat hits this frequency, the sound waves interact with the walls in a way that creates a standing wave, a phenomenon where the sound appears to come from inside the listener's own head. This is not a subjective vibe. It is a measurable measurement of acoustics. in the Celtic salt mines, specifically in the ritual chambers of Hallstatt. The length and height of the rooms are calculated to support this exact frequency. At 110 Hertz, the human brain begins to shift activity from the left prefrontal cortex to the right, a state associated with trance and reduced perception of pain. The question we must face: is this acoustic alignment a mathematical coincidence of mining geometry, or was the subterranean network designed for more than mineral extraction? To understand why salt mines are unique, we must look at the lithology, the physical character of the rock. Halite is an evaporate mineral with a cubic crystal system. Unlike limestone or granite, which scatter sound waves through their porous or granular structures, salt crystals are highly efficient conductors of vibration. In a chamber where the walls are pure sodium chloride, sound does not just bounce, it is amplified and clarified. Modern halotherapy, the practice of spending time in salt mines for respiratory health, is well documented in medical literature. We know that the high concentration of salt ions in the air has a biological effect. What is less discussed is the piezoelectric property of salt under tectonic pressure. When a mountain moves, even slightly, it exerts pressure on the salt, which can theoretically generate low-level electromagnetic fields. If the Celts understood that these chambers were not just silent voids, but active environments that affected the body and the mind, the mining of salt might have been secondary to the usage of the space itself. The term ritual is often used in archaeology as a placeholder for function unknown. However, in the context of the Hallstatt mines, we have specific markers. Some chambers are located at the end of tunnels that are deliberately difficult to navigate, requiring the miner to crawl for dozens of meters before entering a room capable of holding 50 people. In these rooms, archaeologists have found not just salt-cutting tools, but finely crafted ceramics and evidence of food consumption that suggests communal gatherings rather than shifts of labor. Experimental archaeology has shown that a drum made of animal hide, common in Iron Age Europe, resonates perfectly within these salt-walled geometries. The decay of the sound creates an immersive environment where the rhythm of the drum and the resonance of the room synchronize. We have the rooms, we have the tools, we have the documented resonance. What we do not have is a written record of what was said or sung in these depths. The gap between the physical structure and the intended experience remains our greatest challenge. The Hallstatt resonance is not an isolated incident. When we look at the broader pattern of ancient construction, a fascination with the 110 Hertz frequency emerges globally. In the Hal-Saflieni Hypogeum, a multi-story underground structure in Malta, dated to 4000 BCE, the oracle room is carved to amplify a low male voice throughout the entire complex. In Newgrange, Ireland, the central chamber resonates at 110 Hertz. In the Chavin de Huantar temple in the Andes, the labyrinthine tunnels were designed as an acoustic filter system. This suggests a knowledge system that prioritized sound. For the Celts, who inhabited a world of dense forests and mountain mist, sound was a primary tool for navigation and spiritual mapping. The salt mines offered the most stable, controllable acoustic environment possible. Inside the mountain, external noise is eliminated. Temperature is constant. The air is sterile. It is the perfect laboratory for sonic manipulation. But why 110 Hertz specifically? Research into neuroacoustics indicates this frequency is the threshold where the brain stops processing language and starts processing pure sensation. If we accept the possibility of intentional acoustic design, we must examine the tools. Iron Age miners used bronze and later iron pickaxes. The marks on the walls of the ritual chambers are different from those in the industrial galleries. In the galleries, the marks are deep and chaotic, optimized for removing the most material in the shortest time. In the resonant chambers, the marks are fine, parallel, and systematic, as if the surface was being tuned or smoothed to a specific finish. That this level of finish is not required for a mine, it is required for an auditorium. Calculations show that to achieve a resonance of 110 Hertz in a room 5 meters long, the walls must be parallel within a margin of error of less than 3 centimeters. Achieving this hundreds of meters underground using only hand tools and flickering torches is a feat of precision engineering. What it suggests is that the miners were not just workers, they were specialists who understood the relationship between volume, surface, and sound. The Hallstatt salt mine resonance is more interesting than any theory about secret ancient frequencies or lost healing technology. Here is why. It is a documented engineering achievement. We have the chambers. We have the acoustic data. We have the physical tools. What we do not have is any other explanation for why an industrial site would invest hundreds of hours into refining the geometry of non-productive rooms. The gap between functional mining and acoustic engineering is where the real mystery lives. It is a reminder that ancient people were not simpler than us. Their interests were simply focused on domains we often ignore. We prioritize the visual. They may have prioritized the auditory. When you stand in a chamber that amplifies your own heartbeat until it sounds like a drum, you realize that the technology was not a device. It was the mountain itself. The Celts did not build a machine. They carved a relationship with the Earth's interior. When a standing wave is generated in a confined space, the physical pressure of the sound waves affects the inner ear. At 110 Hertz, this pressure is often described by test subjects as a physical weight on the shoulders or a vibrating sensation in the chest. In archaeological terms, we call this psychoacoustics, the study of how sound affects the human psyche. For a Celtic initiate or a tribal elder, entering these chambers after hours of sensory deprivation in the dark tunnels would have produced a profound psychological shift. The resonance acts as a biological pacemaker, slowing the heart rate and inducing a state of hyperfocus. We can verify the physics of the wave. We can verify the biological response. What remains speculative is whether the Celts named this healing, communication, or transformation. What we know is that they went to extreme lengths to create the conditions for this state to occur. The mine was not just a source of salt, and it was a source of altered experience. The idea of a secret, undiscovered network is a common trope in mystery content, but the reality is more grounded. The salt mines of the Alps are not hidden. They have been known and worked for 3,000 years. The secret is not their existence, but their complexity. Mainstream archaeology has often ignored the acoustic data because it doesn't fit the economic model of mine equals factory. When we shift our perspective to mine equals ritual space, the undiscovered parts are not physical tunnels, but functional layers of the architecture we already have. Every year, new chambers are mapped in Hallstatt as the salt mountain shifts and older galleries are reopened. These discoveries don't point to aliens or lost continents, as they point to a sophisticated understanding of acoustics that we are only now starting to rediscover through modern physics. The secret is right in front of us, encoded in the measurements of the walls. To understand why the Celts would spend hundreds of hours carving a resonant chamber, we must look at their cosmology. For the peoples of the Iron Age, the Earth was a living entity. The mines were not just holes in the ground, they were entries into the other world. In Celtic mythology, the underground was the domain of the ancestors and the source of all wisdom. Salt, because it preserved meat and healed wounds, was seen as a sacred substance, a gift from the mountain. It follows that the place where this substance was found would be treated with more than just industrial interest. The acoustic resonance was likely seen as the voice of the mountain itself. By aligning the chambers to 110 Hertz, the Celts were tuning themselves to the earth. The precision was a form of respect, a way of ensuring that the human presence in the deep was in harmony with the natural environment. What we know, the prehistoric salt mines of Hallstatt and Bochnia contained chambers with precise acoustic resonance at 110 Hertz, engineered into the rock through systematic hand cutting. What we think we know, these chambers were likely used for ritual or communal purposes involving sound, possibly leveraging the biological effects of standing waves on the human brain. What we don't know? We do not know the specific cultural meaning of these sounds to the Celts, and nor do we have a complete map of all resonant sites within the vast subterranean networks. The Hallstatt salt mines, a 3,000-year-old industrial and ritual complex carved into a mountain of crystal. It was built by people who understood something about the physics of sound that we are only now starting to quantify. The structure has been waiting for us to ask the right question for 3,000 years. We are getting closer. The silence of the salt mines is not an absence of sound, but a waiting frequency. If this video gave you something real, subscribe to the channel. More sites, more anomalies, more of the genuine unresolved questions that make ancient history worth studying beyond the surface. The silence of the salt mines is not an absence of sound, but a waiting frequency. If you know this site, this artifact, or this question from the research literature, leave a comment. Why does the geometry of the Hallstatt prehistoric mining chambers specifically match the resonant frequencies required to induce a standing wave at 110 Hertz? This investigation into subterranean resonance is the first step in understanding the acoustic Neolithic, a pattern of site selection based on auditory rather than visual perception. The vault stays open,